Brilliant. Thanks for joining us this evening, giving up a bit of your time. So we're going to go straight into, do you want to just give us a little bit of a brief introduction to yourself and your job?
Yes, so I am Charlotte Gibson. I'm a Salesforce developer. I have been in the Salesforce space since about 2006, started out as an admin with very little technical background to begin with. And I kind of did a lot of Salesforce admin work for a small charity initially, and then when I realized that before the days of Process Builder and all the other automation stuff that Salesforce has made available, like flows, I realized that in order to do any cool stuff in Salesforce, you got to learn to be a developer. So I kind of, in about 2011, I moved into the dev space, and since then I've been Salesforce developer, kind of doing a lot of admin work in there as well, because there's no such thing as a developer who doesn't do admin work as well. And for the last couple of years, I've been working towards my architect certifications as well.
Oh, great, brilliant. Well, we'll definitely get into that a little bit down the line in the conversation. Just one thing I realised I ought to do for anyone that is actually out there and doesn't know who I am. I know there's a few of you that names I definitely recognise, but I'm Abby, and I am a marketing and partnerships manager for Salesforce Supermoms. And good thing to know about me is I actually did the Supermoms course myself as well. I did the admin course. I haven't done the dev one yet, you never know. So a bit of a 2-for-1 this evening, because I can also answer any questions about the admin course, and perhaps along the way share a little bit about my experience of studying for that, in case any of you are considering both courses at once. So thanks very much, Charlotte, for joining us, giving us that little brief overview there. Now, you're obviously at home this evening. You've got a very professional setup there with the headset and the chair. Do you work from home most of the time?
No, well, I have the flexibility to work from home whenever I like. My team is spread out between Edinburgh. There's a guy who's fully remote in Aberdeen, and the rest of my team is in Stockholm. So it doesn't really, unless I've got meeting, unless the whole team is in town, I can work from home whenever I like. But I like to work in the office because it's a really nice space. So I can work from home usually 2 to 3 days a week. Got my little office here, which is quite nice. And yeah, it's good.
And what are the advantages of working from home? Because you are a mum, right? You've got a daughter?
Yep, I've got a 3-year-old. Flexibility. So I can, on rainy days, for example, and I don't want to have to cycle, I cycle her to nursery usually, but on rainy days, I can just drive her to nursery and park the car here and just come straight back here and start my day quick and, up early, and don't have to think about the commute home on the bike and going to pick her up, because I'm working from home, so I can work a little longer as well. The flexibility from that point of view is really good.
Yeah.
And also what are the space, like without everyone kind of hubbubbing in the office. I love the hubbub, but sometimes it's difficult to concentrate.
Yeah, I'm the same actually. So I work from home most of the time, but try to go into the office on a Friday just to have some other human conversation as well. It's really good. So great. So do you want to tell us a little bit more? So you're a Salesforce developer for a company based in Edinburgh, but so what does that mean you actually do day to day? Can you tell us a little bit about your average day, if there is one, a typical day?
Yeah, so my team works agile, so that means that we have a typical sprint. We work in sprints, so we'll have, like, the beginning of the sprint, we work out what we're going to do in the sprint, and then we work through all of our tasks, and then at the end of the sprint, 3 weeks in, we wrap all our tasks up. We have another priority session with our stakeholders, and then we start a new sprint. So every second day in the sprint, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have what's called a stand-up. So my whole team gets together. There's 6 of us all together. We get on a video call. We go through our list of tasks that we're all working on. We discuss any issues that anyone's having. So yeah, that's sort of a 9:30 stand-up. My days are made up of meetings with stakeholders. So I'm getting towards architect level. So I'm doing a lot of kind of high level architectural discussions with stakeholders, trying to understand their wider needs, but also drilling down into the smaller needs as well, like the nitty gritty, understanding what work would need to be done by a dev, understanding what work we can punt over to our admins who are hungry for things to help them learn as well. Yeah, and then the rest of my day is made up of coding and business analysis to a certain extent as well, like analyzing my stakeholders' requirements and making sure that I understand what I need to do before I do it, because there's no point in writing something half-baked and then realize you got everything wrong at the beginning. Yeah, that's pretty much my typical day. Meetings and coding, and a lot of fun interaction on Slack as well.
Oh, okay, great. So there's a few questions come off the back of that, I think. One of them that I want to touch on first is a little bit about the career pathway within Salesforce, because we mentioned a few different roles there. So we mentioned admin, and I think quite a few of us, most of our audience will know what that is. We're sort of talking entry-level Salesforce there. And then from that, you can build your career in quite a few different directions and specialisms, but you mentioned there architect. So for anyone new to Salesforce, we're not talking about building a house here. We're talking about something entirely different. So do you want to talk to us a little bit more about what an architect is and what that means, and perhaps like why you want to do it and how you're working towards it?
Well, a lot of devs and a lot of admins as well, they've got an architecture going on in their brain anyway. Anytime you think about how something needs to be built, you're thinking in some level about architecture. The bigger a Salesforce org gets, the more you need to keep your architectural hat on to understand how this piece of work you're doing over here might affect this other piece of work you're doing over here. So you need to make sure that you're not causing an issue down the line. So for example, in Apex, which is the code that Salesforce utilizes, in Apex, it's entirely possible to write something that's not bulkified. What that means is that you're using up a lot more Salesforce resource than you really should. And then if you have another process that sets off your code that's not bulkified without an architectural hat on, you haven't thought about the architecture, you could run into Salesforce governor limits, which means that everything falls over. Whatever, the moment a user hits the save button, all of a sudden they get an error message saying CPU time limit exceeded or something strange like that. So in terms of architecture, an architect will want to think about the big picture, essentially. Also things like how other systems will integrate with Salesforce, for example. So an architect needs to know how to write different APIs and call outs to different third-party systems. An architect will need to think a lot about sharing and visibility, for example. So we'll need to make sure that they fully understood the needs of the Salesforce org, and therefore what the security settings should be for every user, which user needs to see which records, that kind of thing. And yeah, Salesforce sharing and visibility is a vast topic.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And what kind of draws you to wanting to be an architect?
Well, for one thing, there's the money, which is quite nice.
We all need it, let's face it.
Yeah, it helps. But in addition to that, there's the added satisfaction of building a really nice system, building a system that's humming along really nicely. And it just means that the more feathers you've got in your cap in terms of understanding how different facets of Salesforce architecture work, the more you can problem solve and the more you can deliver smooth solutions for your stakeholders. Brilliant.
And what is it? So with Salesforce, you get your different certifications. So level 1, and one of the courses we run is so you can get your administrator certification. And then we're just launching in October the Platform Developer 1 course, which will be our first course looking at that, which is one of the next steps on the pathway to architecture.
Definitely.
So I want to talk a little bit about these certifications and how you go about getting them. So I know you've got something like 7 or 8 certifications.
Seven certificates. 8 if you count the old Dev 401, but they don't count that one anymore. I took away a certification.
We'll let you get away with it. We'll call it 8 today.
No, it's 7.
So, I think I've got a few questions that branch off of that. So with certifications, I think when you're in the Salesforce world, it's about constantly studying. So there's keeping those certifications up to date and then moving on to those next levels. So how do you, especially when you're a mum and you've got your job and then you want to think about furthering your career with like studying and learning new things as well, how do you find it managing them all? And have you got any tips for anyone who's looking to do it? No one's got it perfect.
No one's got it perfect. I mean, TrialHeaded was a game changer for everyone, I think. When it first came out, it was a game changer for end users and for admins. And I was like, well, where's my content? Where's my intermediate developer content? And then they started bringing out the intermediate developer content and the advanced developer content, and I suddenly went, oh, so much to learn. So yeah, Trailhead, I try to get I try to at least get part of a badge every night. I don't always succeed. Sometimes I just want to go away and watch Supernatural, but yeah, for me, I mean, one of my next certifications is the advanced developer. So what's it called? Platform Dev 2 now. And Platform Dev 2, in order to get that, you need to get the Advanced Apex Specialist Super Badge, which is a fairly gargantuan task, really. It's made up of several other super badges and lots of project work. So, we're talking hundreds of hours of project work and study. But everything I do helps me understand more about Salesforce, because there's a lot in that I simply don't know yet.
Yeah. So Trailhead is really great because it breaks it down into quite bite-sized, manageable chunks, doesn't
Absolutely.
it? So for anyone who doesn't know, Trailhead is Salesforce's online learning tool, and it's open to everyone. And it's got some really, really great modules on there, and you can work through them. So as part of our courses, you'll work through some Trailheads that will really help you learn the basics, and then we go on to build on that. And yeah, I think a few people have said this, and it's a great thing about Salesforce is you kind of can do it in really little chunks whenever you've got time. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be too overwhelming a prospect. You can gradually build up to it. And it helps that they've gamified it quite nicely. So you get all these badges and different levels to get through. So that's really nice. Yeah, it's a really, really great platform. I can just see actually that I have got a question in. So let me just take a look at this. So someone has got 3 years of QA experience. Now I'm going to go out and say I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means?
Quality assurance.
Quality assurance. Yeah, as I said,
quality analyst maybe.
And have a 5-year gap in my career, and now I'm planning to start my career in Salesforce as an admin and developer. How can you enter the Salesforce ecosystem as many companies ask for experience first? Ooh, that's a good one. Probably both got something to add there. Do you want to go? Have you got any tips there?
Yep. So my first job as a junior developer, I think I maybe overestimated my skills as a junior developer. I didn't know how much I didn't know yet. And so when they took me on, one of the questions they asked in the interview was, what can we do to make sure that you have what you need to learn on the job? And I was like, oh, access to Google. So I swear to God, that first dev job, I was riddled with the imposter syndrome. I was sure that they were going to fire me. I was sure that I didn't know enough to do the job properly. And then I got my first feedback from my boss, and she was like, I'm really delighted with how well you're learning and you're really applying yourself, and you don't ask any questions before you Google something very hard first. And I'm really happy with that. So yeah, imposter syndrome is a big issue for a lot of people, a lot of women in particular. I would say in terms of getting into the dev space without any experience as a developer, maybe even look for senior admin roles, and also look out for work with small charities if they need a developer to do certain tasks that can't be done by an admin.
And I think I will hop in here, and obviously our courses are great, I'm going to say that, but we designed them in a specific way for this very reason. So the course, yes, it involves going to Trailhead, yes, it involves the webinars and online learning, but an important part of all our courses is the mentorship. So it helps you understand the ecosystem, know what's going on, make connections. Building connections within the Salesforce ecosystem is a big one that's going to get you really far. And we actually have an employability module in our admin course about how to do that, particularly on social media. We talk about that quite a lot. And then the fundamental part of our course is the work experience element that we do, because we know that a lot of Salesforce roles require that experience, and a lot of the mums who come through our courses don't have it, so we have the work experience element there for you to get that first success story. So through the admin and the dev course, you'll be working with a non-profit and helping them with part of something that they need doing. On the admin course, that is usually an implementation. And it really helps build your confidence and give you a success story to talk about. And usually the senior consultant who will have been leading you on that project will then be able to give you a reference based on the work that you've done. So that is exactly why we've designed the courses the way we have. And the platform dev course does include some work experience with a nonprofit as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I've got to say, one of my close friends did the Salesforce Supermoms course last year, and I can't speak highly enough about the experience that she got on it. I think that the model that Heather and the team there have put together is fantastic. It's a really good program.
Because it is about more than just learning the skills. Yes, the skills are very important, and you're not going to get a job without them, but it's about the community we have around that as well to help with exactly this kind of thing, the employability. And then also we have a recruitment team who are going to work towards placing you in a role afterwards as well. You know, the biggest part of our success is seeing our mums go into work. So we're going to work really hard to make sure that you can get a role once you've got the certifications as well. And our team, they specialize in finding flexible roles. And we also only really work with partners who are open to that. And people who work with us, the businesses that work with us, know what background our mums have and know that they might not have a lot of Salesforce experience, but they've been on this great course that will have given them the skills they need. And also what I say to all mums who are signing up is don't undervalue all that previous experience you have and the skills you've got from that and the huge amount of transferable skills you have from that. Because I think we'll go back to something, Charlotte, you were saying in your typical day. Yes, you are doing writing code and Apex and things like that. But you also said about, you know, you're doing a lot of work, and especially when you go further up into things like architecture as well, you're doing a lot of work with your users or your clients. You know, if you're a consultant or whoever you're building the platform for, you know, within the business, you need to be able to have those communication skills and those skills to talk to people as well, right? So all of that stuff. Skills. Yeah. What would you say actually are the top kind of skills apart from code? Yes, you need the code to be a developer. What in your experience kind of are the good skills to have?
I think being curious. So asking lots of questions. Why do you need that? What's your end goal? Take a step back. Why? So questions to ask clients or stakeholders. You tell me you want this report, but what's your actual, you know, need? What's your requirement from having the report? How can I help do this in a smarter way? Curiosity is a really good one.
That's a good one. Yeah, and I would say the communication skills definitely. Yeah, that being able to keep questioning people and do it effectively. Yeah, really good. Okay.
And also, if sorry, last one. If a project isn't going as quickly as it ought, or if you've hit road bumps, knowing, well, not knowing when, but knowing to speak to your stakeholders promptly about it as well. You know, keep everyone in the loop about what's going on. Don't, in terms of managing expectations, you always want to make sure that you're not going to overpromise and underdeliver. That's just embarrassing.
Yeah, keeping communication channels open and being able to do that, because I think it is a bit of a cliche, but I think finding that balance between someone who is technical enough to understand all the technical stuff and isn't just sitting at their computer all day coding, and, you know, the person who can communicate with everyone as well. You know, it's a balance, and that's why I think it suits mums really well.
Definitely.
That kind of thing. So great, thank you. There were so many questions I had for you coming off some of the things you already said there. I wanted to go back to a bit of a more technical point that you will have to speak about because I don't know very much about it at all. And that is around the coding side of it. What kinds of skills, if people do have a more technical background and have learned some skills in the past, what is going to come in useful? So, for example, what is Apex based on?
Yeah, so Apex is a Java-like language. Any Java developer coming into Apex will recognize it immediately and might gnash their teeth every now and then about some things that they can do in Java that they can't do in Salesforce. But having said that, there are some things in Salesforce that you can do that you can't do in Java. So Salesforce provide a lot of inbuilt methods. So I'm in the don't be afraid of the documentation, the Salesforce documentation. There's a lot of useful information in there. I'm usually in there several times a day looking up like random map methods or string methods or API names of various Salesforce objects, for example. So there's Apex, which is a Java-like language. There's Visualforce, which is kind of like a HTML-like language. It's Salesforce's own web like markup, if you like. And then moving away from that, there's the newest big thing in Salesforce, which is Lightning Web Components, which is all JavaScript and HTML5 in the background, sorry, in the foreground rather, which I've literally just started sinking my teeth into myself, and it's really exciting. There's some really cool stuff coming out of that.
Cool.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say would be quite important to know is SQL. So if you're already skilled in SQL or SQL, SQL is basically Salesforce's flavor of that, and it's very useful to know different ways to manipulate a SQL query. And oftentimes I find it more useful to write a SQL query in the developer console than to go and write a report, because I've got a lot more control over how the report runs. Plus, you can report on, you can run a query on objects that you can't report on. For example, attachments. If you want to know what are your biggest attachments in the org, if you write a SQL query in the dev console and say, show me all the attachments with the largest file size, then all of a sudden you find your biggest attachments, and then you can go, delete, if you're getting near your file storage space, for example, which we are.
So that's a good example. I was going to say, actually, like, what are a few things that really motivated you to move up to platform developer? So if we've got some admins out there who are thinking about taking that leap, I guess, what motivated you, and like, what were your concerns a bit at the time, and how did you get over those concerns?
Well, what motivated me was being able to learn how to do things that you can't do as an admin. So a whole lot of process automation, batch classes, APIs, call outs to external APIs, a lot of stuff that you simply can't do, or you couldn't do anyway in 2011. There's a lot that you can do now that you couldn't do back then. I found that really exciting. I really liked the ability to kind of write something that would solve quite a big issue that you can't just do with clicks. In terms of any of my concerns going in, well, one of them was I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not going to learn this. But you are good enough, and you are smart enough, and you are going to learn it. It just takes time and not giving up, really. Yeah,
and I think that's a really good attitude to have just coming into Salesforce anyway, because I think something that I found quite nice about being an admin, because I'm not from a tech background, so when I did my admin certification, it was quite a big step for me, and I was concerned as well about, you know, is this going to be right for me? Am I going to be able to do it? And I had a really, really great mentor, but sometimes if I asked her a question, she would still have to go away and think about it, or she'd just say, oh, just look it up. Like, everything is there to be found if you're willing to keep learning.
And it's I mean, it is a vast ecosystem in every sense of the word. It's vast in terms of the things that you need to learn, the things that Salesforce can do, but it's also vast in terms of the amount of information out there, the resources available to find the answers. And you know what? Sometimes the answers just aren't out there, but you ask a question on Stack Exchange and you make sure that your question is well put together, and then someone comes along and answers it, and all of a sudden you've written a question that is out there in the ecosystem, and someone else will come in and make use of the answer.
I think you've said a word there a couple of times that I think I've used as well, and I get so used to it now, but it sounded weird to me when I wasn't in Salesforce before, about the ecosystem. What we define as the ecosystem, and Ohana, and these kind of sales, that when you're in Salesforce, you kind of start to take them for granted. But do you want to just I guess say what the ecosystem is, and this idea of Ohana, and kind of how it's helped you and what it means to you?
Sure. So the ecosystem, well, Salesforce is a platform, right? So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with Salesforce, and you don't have to go outside of Salesforce to do it. So you can write an app or whatever within Salesforce, but there are lots of apps, third-party apps out there that have been written by a Salesforce partner, for example, and you can literally just plug that into Salesforce. And so you're kind of operating in part of the ecosystem at that point. So there's the app ecosystem, there's the ecosystem of all of the developers and admins and end users and everyone using TrialHeaded and the Salesforce community that's there. And that kind of feeds into this idea of Ohana that Salesforce has started using. And you know what? I started hearing the word Ohana and I was like, oh, is this like Lilo and Stitch or something? And now I just I started using it myself ironically, and now I'm using it as well. I've got I met a little group of a group of people at the Trailhead DX in San Francisco last year, and we've become our own little ohana, and we share ideas on a LinkedIn chat that we've got going and everything. And yeah, it's just a nice little idea of having a group of friends who all are enthusiastic about the same thing and want to help each other and help each other develop in the Salesforce world, in the ecosystem.
In the ecosystem, yeah, exactly. And this is something that when you get into Salesforce, you can really get into it. And I think it was a really nice thing for me to come into in terms of we have the Supermoms community, which is really, really supportive. And once you're in, you're in. And, you know, part of that as alumni as well, even when you finish your course. But then this wider ecosystem is really, really supportive. And that's, you know, partly why we encourage a lot of Supermoms, especially if they're new to technology or Salesforce, to get involved online, on social media, on things like LinkedIn. LinkedIn hugely,
user groups.
The user groups, yes, on the Trailblazer Success community. I went to my first group meeting just last week. I went to the Women in Tech London group, and it was, yeah, it's really nice, really, really supportive, really friendly, welcoming to newcomers. So yeah, it's just a really nice community to get into. So I definitely would encourage people not to worry about it. Like, that's something that's really nice about starting out a career in Salesforce. There's really lots of support out there once you start looking for it.
Definitely.
So yeah, thank you very much. I guess a few things. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so do get your questions into me if you've got any. I guess a couple of things. One practical thing, you mentioned like the Trailblazer community there, but more widely as well, are there any kind of groups, any specific ones that you'd recommend that people join if they're interested? Yeah, not just on the Trailblazer community, but more widely.
Yeah. So I'm more of a solo learner than a group learner. Everyone learns in a different way. For me, probably one of the most useful resources out there for learning has been Stack Exchange, Salesforce Stack Exchange. There is a developer community as well in Salesforce. I just find that it's not quite as what's the word, rigorous. It's not quite as rigorous as a Stack Exchange community. So Stack Exchange can be a little bit scary when you start out, because when you write a question, people can downvote your question. Like, not just downvote answers, but downvote questions, which kind of made me go a little bit twitchy at first, and maybe a little bit scared to write my first question. But then there are resources on how to write a good question. So on Stack Exchange, you don't just say, here's my code, I've got a problem. You say, here's what I'm trying to achieve. Here's what I've already tried. Here are the other resources that I've also tried to tap into, but I'm still not having any luck. Can someone please help me? So you really, on the Salesforce Stack Exchange, when you ask a question, you really need to show that you have done your research first before just randomly like spitting a question out there, which means that the quality of questions that come up on Stack Exchange are usually quite good, and the quality of answers are also very good as well, because answers can be upvoted and downvoted as well.
And I suppose it means there's a really good resource there, so you might not even have to ask your question.
Exactly. And when you start typing the title to the question, Stack Exchange comes up with a load of like, here are similar questions. Are you sure none of these answer your question? And there are times when I've found the solution to my question before I even finished typing the title of my question, because someone else has asked something quite similar and my Google search just hasn't found it yet.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for that top tip. And we're pretty much at time now. So I guess, have you just, yeah, it goes fast, doesn't it? Fast when you're having fun. Have you got any final, dare I say it, words of wisdom for anyone thinking about becoming a developer? They just need that little push over the edge to get them to sign up. What would your words of encouragement be to them?
The Salesforce world needs more developers. I'm getting calls all the time from recruiters looking for developers, and I say, I'm sorry, I'm not looking for a job right now, I'm very happy. And they're like, well, do you know anyone else? Can you help us find someone else? So if you go into a Salesforce developer role, you will never want for a job. You will have, once you get enough experience, you'll have your pick of jobs. And it is a very satisfying role. Yeah.
Ah, great.
One last thing that I want to throw in there about certifications. I know we're going a little bit over time, but
Oh no,
I'd
you
like
go
to
for
say,
it,
don't be scared to fail a certification exam.
great tip. You're not the only one who said that either, so I think it is really true.
Absolutely. I've failed a couple and passed them on a second attempt. And the first time I failed one was actually while I was pregnant, and I really lost a lot of confidence at that point. And that was before I had the confidence, like that was before anyone had said to me, don't be scared to fail an exam. And I thought it was the worst thing in the world, and an indictment of my skills as a developer and as a Salesforce, architect in some ways as well. So yeah, don't be scared. Don't be scared to fail. And it's not a reflection on your abilities.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to quite a lot of people who are devs or more senior up the ranks as well, and nearly everyone's failed one of them at some point. Because there is so much, there is a lot to learn, and yeah, you learn a lot from just taking that exam.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And now that the exams tell you which areas you did well and which areas you did poorly in, you know where to focus your efforts next time.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's great advice. Thank you very much. And in terms of jobs, yeah, I would definitely echo the same. So our recruitment team have got plenty going already, and they're well paid, often very flexible as well, which makes them great for us parents. So yeah, it's win-win really.
Definitely.
So I guess my final call to action is that we are running a dev course in October. We still have a couple of spots left in our admin course for September, and we'll be running another one in November as well, and one based in the US in November as well. So got lots of great courses, all of which involve mentors and the work experience. And you might get a great mentor, someone like Michelle with loads of, Charlotte, sorry, or Michelle. We spoke to her last week. She's a great mentor as well. And yeah, so if you've got any more questions, feel free to pop me a message, or you can book a call with me online. The link should be in the email that you'll get tomorrow. So feel free to book in with me and we can have a chat about your individual circumstances. Yeah, with that, we'll say good night to everyone. Thank you so much for your time, Charlotte. Have a really nice, hopefully peaceful rest of the evening. And take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.